The lights on the soundstage were blindingly white, their glare bouncing off polished floors and thick glass coffee tables like daggers. Behind the cameras, a low hum of tension vibrated in the air, the kind of anxious static you could almost taste, like metal on your tongue. The studio was filled to capacity, the audience buzzing with anticipation. Everyone knew something was going to happen. They could feel it, like the stillness right before thunder tears open the sky. At the center of it all sat Whoopi Goldberg, perched calmly at the curved desk of The View, her eyes masked behind signature-tinted glasses, the faintest smirk playing at the corner of her lips. She'd been here before, not this exact moment, but the battlefield it resembled. She knew the feel of incoming fire, knew the way people smiled to your face with sharpened tongues. Her voice, always gravelly with age and truth, had carved its way through decades of triumph and pain. Actress, activist, comedian, survivor. Her skin was thick, her mind sharper than ever. Across from her, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., known simply as Kennedy by most of the media, adjusted his microphone with a too-practiced flick. He was a man molded by legacy, his name a crown and a burden. Politics ran in his veins like wildfire. Yet, unlike the Kennedys of old, his course had veered sharply from the usual playbook. He now moved like a man on a crusade, determined to deconstruct the very stage he once would have been handed by birthright. He had a fire in him, yes, but not all fire illuminates. Some just burn. The stage manager gave the silent countdown. 3.2.1. The theme music faded, and the conversation was already halfway to friction. "Let's talk about the real issues," Kennedy was saying, voice smooth with loyally confidence. "The American people are tired of being lied to, tired of narratives pushed by the mainstream media, and shows like this one." Whoopi blinked once, slow, then leaned back in her chair like a gunslinger waiting for the draw. Subplot 1 had begun weeks earlier, when Kennedy's team reached out to The View for an appearance. The producers were cautious. He'd become a lightning rod, vaccines, conspiracies, populist rants cloaked in pseudo-intellectualism. But controversy meant ratings, and for ratings, ABC would dine with the devil. Backstage, Whoopi had felt it. A familiar tug of weariness. She'd fought her battles in public for decades. Racism, sexism, ageism, everything in between. Was little she hadn't seen or survived. But there was something especially galling about men like Kennedy. Men who cloaked themselves in ideals, while leaving others to carry the consequences. She didn't hate him, but she knew him, and she'd come prepared. Subplot 2 was even older, a private one. Sarah Hines, one of the show's co-hosts, had recently shared with Whoopi something that stuck with her. Her brother, a veteran and a cancer survivor, had fallen down an online rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, many seeded by Kennedy himself. "He thinks everyone's lying to him now," Sarah had said, voice cracking. "Even me." That conversation had haunted Whoopi. She'd seen how disinformation crept in, changed people. It wasn't just politics, it was personal. Now, live on air, Kennedy leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Whoopi, you talk a lot about truth. But I wonder how much of what you say actually comes from you, and how much is just the script handed to you." There it was. A cold, sharp silence fell. Even the crew flinched. The implication was clear that Whoopi was just a mouthpiece, a puppet. She didn't raise her voice, didn't blink twice. She just leaned in, lips parting with the slow, deliberate grace of a woman about to deliver a sermon. "You know," she said, voice calm as stone, "I've been sitting in this chair longer than most people have held one job, and every day I come here, I bring me, my stories, my scars, my history. I've lived through assassination, war, the AIDS crisis, 9/11s, and a pandemic that took people I loved. So if you think for one damn second that I need someone to hand me a script," she paused, then leaned closer, her voice dropping just enough for the world to lean in. "You're not just wrong. You're lost." 12 seconds. The audience erupted. Not the canned applause cue, but a real, visceral roar. Even the other co-hosts froze, momentarily stunned by the weight of it. Kennedy blinked, His face twitched a micro-expression of confusion, then frustration. He hadn't expected to be matched, much less overwhelmed. And certainly not by someone who wasn't even trying to win. She was just telling the truth. The rest of the segment played out, but the momentum had shifted. Kennedy's arguments began to spiral, veering into murky waters about government overreach, distrust in science, and vague references to elites. But the audience wasn't listening anymore. Whoopi had already landed the knockout. After the show, in the dressing room, Whoopi sat quietly. The cameras were off. The makeup half wiped from her face. She stared at her reflection, then looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly, not from fear, but from memory. From the burden of being the one who always had to stand up, always had to say the thing. A quiet knock. Sarah stepped in. Holding her phone. "It's everywhere," she whispered. "What you said. Twitter, TikTok, everywhere." Whoopi sighed. "That's not the point." "I know," Sarah said softly. "But I just wanted to say thank you for what you said about carrying your stories." Their eyes met. There was nothing more to say. Just the quiet understanding between two women trying to hold a world together, one word at a time. In the days that followed, pundits picked apart the clip. Some called Whoopi a hero. Others said she'd been too harsh. But the clip, those 12 seconds, kept circulating. Played in classrooms, shared in family group chats, echoed in the minds of people who had grown tired of being talked at, and finally felt spoken to. Kennedy moved on, as public figures do. Another interview, another room, another microphone. But a shadow lingered. Not of defeat, but of revelation, because even in conflict, there's clarity. He'd seen something in Whoopi's eyes he didn't understand, and perhaps never would. The quiet, unshakable power of someone who tells the truth, not because it's easy, but because it must be told. The story didn't end with a dramatic walk-off or a viral meltdown. It ended with reflection. With people asking themselves what stories they carried, what truths they hadn't spoken yet. It ended with Whoopi back at the table the next morning, sipping her coffee and watching the sun rise through the studio glass. Another day, another chance to say the thing that matters. And maybe that was the real lesson, that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just speaks. And when it does, the world listens.